Have you ever wanted to run an evil campaign? What about a campaign for undead player characters? Did you want to run the last 1 to 20 campaign Paizo has released? Because they're not going to release another one for a while. Last week, I completed Bloodlords, my first levels 1 through 20 campaign after 2 years of playtime and 98 sessions. In this video, I'll be explaining things I've changed and going through this AP book by book. Beware of spoilers if you're a player character that is meant to be playing in this AP. The structure of this video is going to be as follows. First, I'll talk about the player's guide and what your player characters need to know during character creation. Then, I'll be talking about general GM tips that you should be following throughout this entire adventure path. And lastly, I'll be going through this adventure path book by book and chapter by chapter, letting you know what I've changed and what you should watch out for. Whilst I'll be trying to be making this video as comprehensive as possible, it's possible that I will miss something or mess something up, so let me know what you think I missed in the comments below. Let's get started, and remember to like and subscribe if you found this video useful. Character creation. You as a GM should remind them that this is a lawful evil campaign, not just an evil campaign. Yes, you'll be following orders, but you're meant to be working for the nation of Geb. My player characters were as evil as they could be, but at the end of the day, they still followed the AP and did what they needed to do. Do keep that in mind. This is lawful evil, not chaotic. Encourage undead characters if they want to play as one. I recommend that you all start as living, and then once you kill them off one by one, raise them as undead. Or you can even have them perform a ritual when they think it's appropriate so that they can turn into an undead character. This way, they get 2 lives with the same character, one as a living character and one as an undead version of themselves. Although I recommend free archetype, also undead characters are a pain in the ass when it comes to healing, so get Stitch Flesh, the feat, ASAP for your medic. Reminder that positive energy is not allowed in Geb. Consider adding Geb Police. These hit squads might discipline your player characters if they're caught using positive energy. Those are all the tips I can recommend you for character creation without making this video too long. So let's go ahead and move on to general GM tips. This is an important topic. Biggest thing in this AP is that 25 to 33% of enemies are going to be using void damage as a damage type. This is going to screw you over, mainly because starting book 2, your player characters are going to be immune to void damage. Or they might be immune to void damage already if they start as undead. Things you can do is change that to spirit damage immediately. Also, you could possibly retool the spells of certain enemies and get rid of their harms, and maybe add some sort of other spell that would actually affect your player characters. There's also one more thing, and those are abilities that enemies have that only affect living creatures. Consider changing the text on that, or just let player characters know that, hey, you're going to be affected regardless. Next tip is factions don't actually come up too often. You are told to get faction reputation or give your players chances to get faction reputation, but the latter books don't necessarily reward you for getting this too much. I recommend you house rule or homebrew certain faction rewards. Another general tip, number 3, the BBEG should show up earlier as foreshadowing, or at least he should present himself to the players. Maybe around book 4? Book 5? Definitely earlier than when they show him in the AP, which is literally the last battle. That's when he's going to show up as written, and it doesn't have much of an impact if it does so. Lastly, music. I recommend Diablo 2 music. It's my jam, and I love it. We're going to go ahead and get started with books 1 through 6. I'll be going through book by book, chapter by chapter. Let's go ahead and start with Book 1, Chapter 1. The player character should have a link to Berlin. They should respect her or owe her in some way for maximum effect during the first part of the book. Definitely have Berlin be a powerful character, but somewhat friendly as well, respectable. Your goal as a GM is to have your player characters like Berlin, no matter how evil they are. They have to either like or respect Berlin by the end. I also recommend you make or find a map for Berlin's mansion. I did make one myself, but it's a pretty bad one, so you could probably make a better one yourself. Of course, the farm, the cow will hit like a truck, but it's easy to kite. It's pretty cool to have it be scary, like just in the background mooing. What else? Chapter 1. It's cool that the AP gives you a house, but it's only going to be useful for book 1, maybe?
you somewhat foreshadow that it's not their house forever, although it is technically their house forever, but whatever. That Skull Fairy in Chapter 1 can absolutely kill a player character by a head pop off, so, maybe it's time to make your first undead. The Scrabbling Ribcage does not have to be an enemy. It can be a new pet. It's a cute little pupper. And finally, I recommend... Argon the Annihilator has a really cool voice in my opinion. Can talk like this. Like squelching out the voice through them.
Alright, let's start Chapter 2. Ordegar Stitskull is a great way to introduce Zon Chthon to your players. I had him be specially self-flagellating. Players can choose the Bone Shards or the Bank as a sort of option, but I recommend you as a GM lead them to the Bone Shards first. Also in the Bone Shards hideout, there is a chance here for you to have the Bone Shards surrender as a GM, and maybe even test how evil your players can be. How far will they go with the surrendering enemy team? Bank has some brutal traps, hazards, complex hazards, haunts, whatever you want to call them. Consider probably nerfing them, especially the Scythe trap. Unless you want them to die, of course, so they can turn undead. The food haunt is pretty bad. Be careful for that one. Don't TPK your party. Consider it being a bit coy about the key that opens the vault door. Like if they get stuck and not being able to touch the key to the vault, nothing wrong with asking them to recall knowledge and figure it out, but maybe leave it as a mystery first. Let them play around and see how the vault door opens. And finally, the vault second floor is prime for homebrew. There is a hidden third level that you could add if you wanted to, and there's some empty vaults so you can add stuff in there. So Chapter 3 is pretty straightforward. It's a dungeon. The initial bit can be a little bit of roleplay at the tavern with the tavern members, unless the party members come out overtly hostile. But either way, it's going to end up being a lot of combats. Try to be careful about chaining multiple encounters. That has happened before in many of my games and might result in a difficult fight or two. And lastly, Kepgetta, the boss of this book, can be a little bit easy if you don't play her properly. I'd add a minion, maybe, or two. Maybe just to make the fight a little harder, add the alchemist that is earlier. Just put her in the boss room. Might make it extreme depending on your party size, so, play around, but Kepgetta is easily beatable. Let's go ahead and get started with Book 2, but before we do that, just a little reminder, if you're liking this sort of content and want to appreciate my hard work that went into the entire review of this AP, consider liking and subscribing, please. It really helps me out. Thank you. So, let's get started with Book 2. Book 2, Chapter 1. There is a Void Energy Ritual. It'll happen off screen and just let it happen. It's fine. You can like make it a whole deal, but that's up to you if you want to homebrew it. A lot of house rules around this ritual. A lot of people ignore this ritual. The authors of the AP certainly did. I will just say let it happen and just change damage types on the enemies from Void to Spirit. That should solve your problems. Your player characters will be leaving Grey Dirge for a while. In fact, for most of the rest of the AP. Emphasize that their endpoint at the start of their leaving is going to be Yeled, so that way they don't expect to come back to Grey Dirge. They're going to be doing all this traveling all around the world, Geb, be ending up in Yeled at the end there, so they should be aware they're not coming back. You can make travel interesting, add random encounters. There's random encounters already in Chapter 1 of Book 2. You can add those, save some for later. There's Book of the Dead. There's a lot of cool creatures in there you can add encounters from. Irontavia's Cottage is pretty cool. After they fight the Fletchlings, have Smurtlebin be friendly. They can have him join the Graders Manor. And the fireplace, by the way, is really deadly, so be careful. Try not to TPK. The attic is a really weird creature. Make it a roleplay moment, don't make it a fight. There's plenty of fights. Unless you're doing XP, then you need the fight, but there's a cool moment to do some roleplay with, so give that a shot instead. And then the Irontavia fight is fun, difficult. The real fun bit, though, comes after she dies, and the cottage will come to life and will try to eat the player characters. That's a lot of fun. That is one of the funnest fights that's in this book. Also, Irontavia will come back to life in Book 3, which is kind of lame. At least sort of foreshadow that at this point, that she's not fully dead, or give a hint or something, because it'll be annoying when she does indeed come back. Book 2, Chapter 2. Water levels suck, but Salashore has a lot of good roleplay opportunities. There's a couple of optional quests you can do before making your way to Sonny's lair. It's up to you how much you want to emphasize them for reputation points. We had fun doing them anyway, and I gave water breathing potions and the swimming elixirs as a sort of reward, as sort of something to help the party out. On that, undead don't need to breathe, just to clarify, but if they don't have a swimming speed, they will struggle with underwater combat. So check those underwater combat rules out. Sonny's Lair and Fight is a straightforward dungeon. The most interesting part of that dungeon would be the Dagon statue and Bland Lul, the big blob, that I kind of made an optional boss that didn't really want to be bothered. It didn't want to fight, but if you want to destroy the statue as per the Blessing of Urgathoa, then you can do that as a sort of optional thing. I did give him a blessing at the end from Urgathoa. It was the Iron Gut Goblin sort of feature for all player characters. Book 2, Chapter 3. This is an infiltration chapter, and it's quite a bit of fun if you pull it off correctly. Definitely emphasize that there's a lot of townsfolk and they can just not fight all the way to Dekrosh's lair. This is going to have to be an infiltration section, and the way I did it wasn't exactly raw. I made it I tweaked it a little bit. Gave him a choose your own adventure infiltration options. I gave him 3 options at a time, narrated it, made it link to the next 3 options that came up, and etc, etc. Also, the suggestion I've been given is to use the new Pray for Death infiltration mechanics that's in the Pray for Death book, so give that a look. The Dekrosh fight was pretty easy. I added some clockwork enemies to make it a little spicier. Book 3, Chapter 4. The biggest things I can emphasize here is definitely have fun with the night out with Lord Zithny. I had a whole side adventure. You can also have fun with Kirill Vonth. Definitely emphasize these 2 NPCs. There are other Bloodlords they can get to have relationships with. Nath Nelma. Definitely try to get the player characters' names if possible, because she can use an ability in combat. Lastly, Solvik is a party killer. It killed one of my Bloodlord's parties. Did make him elite, but it's still pretty rough even without elite. Definitely don't add him to the other boss and make him an optional boss. Alright, that's it for book 2. Let's start book 3. Chapter 1. Celdeg is a major player for this book. Play him up as powerful. He is level 17 after all. And I personally had a player hate him due to his backstory, which kind of works with later in this AP. It's time to leave Great Urge again. This time we're going on a wild goose chase. Basically, this book is not as great as the others. Consider changing it up if you're watching this video in advance of running Bloodlords. I would cut out the entire Thornheart stuff of this chapter, as it never came up again. It was kind of pointless. The important part is the Vetelarana vampires and their weaknesses, which is going to come in handy once their players learn this, not only for the final boss of this book, but for this final boss of this entire adventure path. Chapter 2. This is the actual Field of Maidens, and it's not the worst if you run this right. Basically, there's 2 camps, and you're sort of meant to side with one or the other. What my party did, though, is both camps ended up in a massive bloodbath fighting each other, and the player characters kind of double-crossed both camps, killed everyone, got everybody's loot. It was pretty nice. That could be kind of cool. The Stone Sisters do have a pretty nasty curse, which can't really be removed until the end of this book, which might kind of suck for a player. Just consider not adding this or removing this. This chapter does feel a little bit jointed and a little weak. You could have Carinza, maybe not double cross the player characters, but you could also have her have the remove curse spell, which could be useful to have them trust Carinza, and then you can double cross them. That might be fun, actually. Chapter 3. Carinza's dollhouse is absolute fluff and padding. Unless you want to roleplay creepy dolls, which I did, and I had a voice changer and it kind of worked out well, but if you don't want to do that, I would just cut this out, personally. Gristle Hall is a fun and pretty much straightforward dungeon. I would make some of these encounters non-combat encounters. The librarians and the ballroom come to mind, for example. Iron Tavia, by the way, was completely an easy fight for my players, so consider adding Carinza if you are keeping her evil for an extra spicy challenge, although it might be a little bit too hard. So, Book 4, Chapter 1. Go ahead and cut out the Celebrants Parade to meet Geb. It's absolute fluff. I guess you could keep it, but I just thought it was a waste of time. I did have Dazan be kind of a love interest of a player character, so, maybe give her a strong personality, because she could be cool. I recommend you do find a good map for the Cinerarium, as your player characters will be back here over and over and over again. any undead lich lair map or undead throne map. You can find it on Google. Do play Gev as a level 30 creature he is. He doesn't smile. He expects people to respect him, to bow. Very powerful, very deadly. Can kill a player character with a snap of a finger if he wants to. Play him as the ruler of a kingdom, and your players will respond as such. Becoming a Bloodlord is a big deal and should be emphasized. Consider having a Bloodlord ball or a Bloodlord party, and it's a good opportunity for the player characters to actually meet Kemnebi at this point at such a party. Maybe a little foreshadowing. Player characters should be wanting to kiss Cortash Kane's butt for influence points, because he has some really good rewards. Also, new house dungeon, yay. Nothing super exciting here, but there's ample opportunities for downtime in this chapter, as they will get a house. I think the Gliminal fight was fun, if I recall correctly, in the house. There's a lot of fights in this AP. Lastly, for chapter 1, Bloodlord machinations are a thing that we kind of did once and basically ignored, but if you are doing more with Reputation, you can do stuff with Bloodlord machinations, so that's up to you though. Chapter 2. This is just one big ass dungeon. It is a fun dungeon, and I kind of ran it mostly as written. Combine some fights, make some fights NPCs to talk to instead of fighting, but standard Paizo dungeon rewriting, and it's a really good dungeon. I really enjoyed this one, actually. Chapter 3. This is a bit of a fun chapter. Absolutely make sure one of the wraiths gets away so you can have a chase mechanic. And definitely do the chase mechanic, although make sure you know how the chase mechanic works before doing the chase mechanic. Got it? Chase mechanic. The golems are strong. I actually killed one of my player characters. Keep this in mind. And lastly, the cathedral is a pretty straightforward dungeon that didn't stand out in my memory. Chapter 4. The arena is a really fun encounter. The terrain is interesting. Enjoy the fight. Put some Colosseum ambience on. Have them ham up the crowd. The Hanging Castle can be annoying for player characters that cannot fly. I did make Harmony and Agony friendly. Have her betray Hyrule instead of attacking the party. Have her ally with the party. She actually helped in the final battle, distracted him. Also, the Roper was a chill dude as well. What's up? Also, Ibu can dump some Kemnebi lore subtly. There's a lot of non-combat encounters in this, although the combat encounters are pretty good. The Terror Guards are a lot of fun to play with, and you can have some fun fights here. Also, one of the hazards is really nasty, so have fun with that. It's time for Book 5, Chapter 1. Back in Yuled. At least you have a map now, as opposed to not having a map before, huh? Gathering rumors against Pisabnet does feel pointless if the War Masters Council is going to move against him anyway. Consider redoing this. Rumor finding was fun for our party, but it did feel bad in the end when they were like, oh, he's going to move against Pisabnet anyway. Well, what was the point of all that? Get rid of some of the fluff encounters that are just there for experience points. There's an ambush that happens. Why? Unless you really want to have combat, of course. Nothing's stopping you, but I don't like fluff. The Pallid Pinnacle is yet another dungeon. There's a lot of dungeons in this AP, huh? It's pretty straightforward, and, you know, remember to play Pisabnet as a friendly NPC before your players mistakenly slaughter him. I had him have a very nerdy voice because he waves a lot. Hi, guys! He does have the information, so make sure they don't slaughter him. And if you play him that way, maybe they will because he's annoying. Who knows? Chapter 2 is one of the funnest chapters in this book, and honestly, just give them the tickets. Why does everything have to be a whole deal? Just give them the tickets. They can buy them. Doesn't have to be a whole deal, but do what you want. My players had a lot of fun acting out scenes like the fools they are. Giving them their cue cards was a lot of fun, and having them do the actual acting was fun. Although the battles in the play, there's one too many. I think there's two. So just remove one and keep another. Your choice. And then once you get into the little shadow playhouse, that's fine. It's a straightforward dungeon, but the Gyasi fight is, I think it's kind of dumb to fight her if you need to talk to her. The AP has it like this. Consider having her not fight the party. It was annoying to have them fight Gyasi only to have her be like, no, wait, I have information. Also, the whole brother side quest is junk. Chapter 3. This is a really fun, really long dungeon. The cool thing about this dungeon, though, is the Lich at the end. Should be at the very end, actually. Combine them with the 3 other mobs that are there. And then just have a massive encounter with a countdown. Put a countdown on the bound one. Make the bound one's token big. Put a countdown on him. And start counting down 6 rounds, 9 rounds, based on how strong your party is. Once the counter gets to 0, have the bound one screech with a lot of AoE damage. Hurts everybody in the room, might even finish the enemies off. But the point is not the screech. The point is the anticipation. Oh, the bound one is counting down. When you finish the fight before the countdown is over, it does add a little bit of excitement to the party. That's how I did it. That's how I recommend you do it. Also, at the end, the bound one gives you its eye and some information. That is important though. Grab that eye. Book 6. Finally, we're at the end. Chapter 1. This chapter feels like a little bit of filler. It was a fun opportunity for my player characters to go into the boneyard and steal some souls for their own nefarious uses. Definitely have Enthrice be friendly and played as an ally. Have her hate her fellow co-workers. I liked role-playing her, and she called the boneyard the Bone Zone. And the Bone Zone was a pretty tough fight, mainly because I had the party fight the entire map at once. Try not to do that. Do it if you want him to have a challenge. I don't know. Of course, they almost died, but it's fine. It's fine. Chapter 2 is the best chapter in this entire book and possibly this entire AP. Because here, spoilers by the way, but if you've been playing Berlin as friendly, good. Because now it's time for the player characters to kill her. And sure, for an optional side quest, this is the point where she might just die. This is why you should have played her super friendly when they came to visit her. And for optimal effect, have her invite her to dinner back in her manor. Same as book 1, good old days, and then... Same with Seldeg, by the way, although in my game he was pretty hated, so that was kind of easy. Still fun to kill former allies for Geb. There's some minor side quests here and there to get all the ritual components. This is a good chapter to finish up your player backstories if you have done that. It's the most freeform chapter in the last AP, the last book. If you're gonna do it, now is your chance. Chapter 3, Periodontia sucks and it's meant to drain resources. Consider removing it if no one's at least an expert in survival. Trust me, because you could actually TPK with that confusion stuff. It's pretty bad, and the player's guide says to not train in survival, so nobody might have taken survival, and it would be really bad if you make him roll that. So keep that in mind. The last dungeon is interesting, the Kibnebi Shadow Sanctum. Fights are a little bit on the easy side, but they're meant to be draining resources, so do drain resources. By the time they reach Kibnebi, they should have a bit of a harder fight with Kibnebi. Remember, they cannot leave to long rest or Kibnebi will escape, or at least have that happen. The Kibnebi fight was fun in my game. I gave him 2 initiatives. The second initiative was like between the 3 players and had 2 actions instead of 3. This made the fight a lot more dynamic and fun. I changed his spell list a lot. Change his spell list. It's gonna be bad if you don't. I gave him Time Stop. I gave him a lot of pre-buff spells, and he would pre-buff because he knows the party's coming. It's a much harder fight than it is, rules is written, and as it should be for the last fight in a 1-20. Don't forget to have the player characters do some epilogues after they're honored by Geb. And that's it for books 1 through 6. This was a bit of a long video, longest video I've ever made, but I hope it was worth it. For those of you who are wanting to learn Bloodlords, hey, watch this Kingmaker review, because why not? And like and subscribe if you actually enjoyed this, because it took me a lot of effort to do. Thank you.